Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and today we have a special report for you all on net neutrality following the announcement by Ajit Pai, chairman of the FCC, that the government will begin deregulating the internet, opening it up for competition on the free market. Of course, this also coincides with a decision by Netflix to look towards a more private alternative that brings them a better quality in their speed, etc. Now, there's much more to it, and for that we are joined once again by the one and only Mr. Jeffrey Tucker, the CLO of Liberty.me, the Director for Digital Development at the Foundation for Economic Education, and the most well-dressed man in the Liberty movement. Thank you for joining us again, sir.
It's a pleasure, and you're right, this is a hugely important issue.
Absolutely, and it's hard to wrap your head around for a lot of people, so I appreciate you going into this with us. Now, I wanted to have you on because you wrote an excellent article at fee.org called Goodbye Net Neutrality, Hello Competition, and I wanted you to go into this subject a bit with our audience. So first off, can you explain to our viewers what net neutrality is and the ramping up of such government monopolization by the U.S. government, especially under President Obama?
Right. So this is the important thing. So President Obama imposed this in, I guess, as a lame duck president in 2015. And, it sounds good, net neutrality, and people like it because they think it means that they're not going to be charged for using high bandwidth services, like Netflix and so on, or torrenting files or something like that. And people think that they're fighting for lower prices. What they don't understand is that net neutrality is really a massive government regulation that benefits the large corporate players, essentially the ruling class of the internet, which means large service providers like Netflix and Yahoo and so on, who all of whom want to kind of force their way on ISPs and prevent ISPs from charging them for their consumer usage, and consumers think they like this. It's a price control. It's like if it would be like if the government said you're going to get $1 gas, consumers would go, oh, that sounds great, right? So of course people like it. What they don't understand is that the large ISPs like Comcast, Verizon, and AT&T also favor net neutrality. And what's interesting about this is that people think they're lying. They think, oh, they're just saying they favor net neutrality. No, they really do favor net neutrality because they figure they can absorb the higher costs and thereby keep competition at bay. And that's really the goal of the large ISPs, to stop startups, the innovative small companies that can come into your community and offer you new alternatives to old technology like cable modems and so on. They want to lock down the sector to progress, essentially. So they're working, so you've got the ISPs working with large content providers to create a kind of Federal Reserve for the internet. That's really what net neutrality is. So don't let them lie to you. I mean, net neutrality is a really nice sounding term that really means a corporate ruling class is going to have permanent control over the internet. So, I mean, look, I am not a fan of the Trump administration. I hope I don't have to tell you that. I mean, I've written a book against the ideology that I consider to be Trumpism. I wrote, 100 articles against this guy. But, I also want to be objective. This is a heroic and strong and powerful, principled move on the part of the Trump administration to come to the defense of freedom against government control. That's essentially what the repeal of net neutrality has done. And it's great because it overcomes all the special interests. It's economically informed. And you see, on the internet, like I had the only article for about 48 hours that seemed to be in support of what the Trump administration did. But it's a great move.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know how you feel in a sense where I have a few viewers that are not a big fan of me because I attack the Trump administration because, I'm an anarcho-capitalist voluntarist. But when it comes down to it, I mean, I've also been in favor of executive orders that he's put forward to get rid of regulations. I mean, the smaller the government, the better. But when it comes down to this, people on the left and the right talk about how terrible monopolies are, but
Right.
when the government is subsidizing and giving regulatory favorhood to these massive corporations, that's what creates these massive monopolization, these huge companies in the first place. So just looking at what's going on here, I mean, do you think that this is really going to be the tip of the iceberg for the internet, or when there's big companies like Cisco that are still regulated into prosperity by the government, will there still be this kind of monopolization of these providers?
It was interesting that Cisco actually was opposed to net neutrality because they're a hardware provider and not so much an ISP or a service provider, or a content provider, which was fascinating to me. There is still enormous problems in the internet in the United States system, but they are not, at least thanks to the Trump administration, they're no longer going to be at the federal level. So all your problems are going to be at the state and local level, and chances are any listeners who are hearing this now are thinking, oh, my internet's terrible. I have a choice between a T1 connection through AT&T and some cable connection, or maybe some satellite thing, and none of the options are good. Okay, that is not the federal regulations at this point, thanks to the Trump administration. What it does is it involves the problems down at the state and local level. But, but upstarts are better able to deal with regulations at that lower level than they are at the federal level. So what I'm expecting to see is a lot of really interesting fiber optic companies and also distributed systems that are going to be invading local markets. But that's going to take time. It'll take a year or something like 2, maybe. But I think the repeal of net neutrality is the beginning of a step. I mean, it's something like, you have to imagine that if we abolish the Federal Reserve, today, which I think we should do, we'd still have state and local banking regulations to deal with, right? But at least we'd be better able to deal with them than we can with the Fed. So to my mind, we should celebrate any deregulation that we get. And this is a very important and a really fantastic step that the Trump administration made.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, what if the prices go up? I mean, when you pay for more, usually it costs more, right? And that is just a part of the free market. But I keep trying to tell people, if there is more competition, more innovation in the market due to actual companies competing against each other, the prices will eventually go down.
It eventually will, right? Yeah. And Josh, the important thing here that people need to realize, I mean, it's like a fact of reality, that internet bandwidth and internet usage is actually a scarce good. It's like anything else. It's like avocados and tennis shoes or dining room tables or anything else. It's a good. It's a service in this case, and it is scarce, and it has to be allocated. You can't just magically announce some rule at the federal level that says everybody should get the same thing at a lower price. It's not sustainable. It's not going to work. We need to be paying for internet access, or at least I should say this more precisely. Internet access needs to be allocated according to some rational system. That could mean paying for it. Maybe it's going to be a payment per use. Eventually, if we have a highly competitive market, my guess is that you're going to be begged to take somebody's internet service for free, or even be paid to use it. The same as in the software industry, you're given 6 months to try for free, or Google searches are constantly for free in exchange for which the advertisers pay and that sort of thing. So at least now we have the opportunity to see an economically rational system emerge. Whereas before, I mean, net neutrality was a kind of socialism for internet service.
Mm-hmm. It definitely was. And I mean, it goes by the same fundamentals that I think I spoke with you about at Freedom Fest when it comes to the healthcare system. When it comes down to it, the market always knows what's right as long as it's free to flourish by the demand of the individual. And I think that it's interesting that we see so many people, especially that call themselves anonymous, coming out in favor of net neutrality when the government is the biggest big brother there is, saying that their concern is that these corporations will ban certain independent medias from being able to be seen by certain people. What do you think of that argument?
As long as the market's free, we're going to be able to get what we want. I mean, maybe it's very likely that the ruling class will lean on companies like AT&T and Comcast and Verizon to restrict access to all kinds of things. In fact, I think that probably will happen. But the important thing about that is, in the end, the internet really wants to be free, and there'll be plenty of companies that'll be ready to swing in to offer you any kind of service you want. You might have to pay a premium for it. I don't know. It's hard to say. So part of the problem here is that you don't really know what the market's going to produce. All we know is it's going to be better than government regulation. Yeah. So we have to think 18, 24 months down the line. And we'll see over the long run. We'll see that the repeal of net neutrality was a fantastic step. I'm guessing that if we look 5 years from now, nobody's going to be paying for internet access. And even better than that, there will not be any central point of failure. You will not have to beg a company to give it to you. My guess is we're going to have distributed systems, very much like blockchain systems, that internet that's not used will become available as part of the commons, and you'll be able to access it based on you're basically companies wanting your attention more than anything else. I mean, there's a fascinating aspect of the market in an age of blockchain is that prices are trending towards zero, but we have to have a free market to get there. And I think we'll eventually get there. I'm guessing 5 years or something like that. We're going to look back, and at these days of Verizon and Comcast and so on, and wonder what were we doing, in the same sense that like now we look back and laugh at dial-up. We're gonna look back and laugh at the fact that people used to pay $80, $100 a month for cable access. That's really got to die. But the important thing about net neutrality is it was a kind of a scheme to preserve that income flow to the biggest players for as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And just bring up dial-up, man. That brings me back just the horrible, wretched screech that the computer used to make and used to shut down the internet when you took a phone call. I mean, it's unbelievable how far we've come, and that's the market. And like you said, it's just the beginning. So obviously there's a lot of hoops we still have to jump through when it comes to government regulation over the market and, these subsidized companies and companies that are taxed less than the competition so that no one can compete. All the while we have these massive regulations in place that are supposed to stop the big bad companies when in reality they prop up these massive corporations and shove all the small businesses out of the market. So we have a long way to go, but you're absolutely right to say, I mean, this is the beginning, and it's the same thing as you follow the money with the climate change movement and big oil companies and banks supporting something like COP22 and Agenda 2030 and all these implementations by the United Nations. You look who is supporting these things, and they're the same companies that these things are supposed to be pushing out of the market. I mean, it's quite interesting for those that look into it. So I really do feel like this is going to be a massive change in the system, and all at the same time we see this massive rally by Bitcoin. We see this massive move towards cryptos. The internet is the future. It's not the, just a little trendy thing that won't stick around for too long, like I believe it was Paul Krugman said in the 1990s.
That's right.
This is here to stay. And with that said, Mr. Tucker, I wanted to quickly, before we wrap this up, go into the recent rally by Bitcoin, because I know you've been a big supporter for many years of Bitcoin, and we have been watching it skyrocket in the past the past year. I mean, it went from $900 and something in January to today it hit about $8,500 or $9,500 US dollars. So what do you think about that?
Well, listen, you know what I think. But let me just tell you that the important thing is to look at the market cap of cryptos in general. That's the critical thing, which right now, today, is $300 billion. That's the market cap of all the crypto assets, not just Bitcoin, but all the rest of them. And this is an astronomical amount. That's approaching JP Morgan levels. Mm-hmm. And the important point is not the high watermark here, which is very high. The important point is that every bit of these asset classes are owned by someone. These are the entrepreneurs of the future. They are not selling; they are holding. And what it's doing is building a new civilization. I mean, what we're going to see in 5 or 10 years is the emergence of a new class of essentially billionaires who are going to be able to feed into a new system of enterprise. It's going to build and wipe out the old and start something new. And you can see it happening right now. It's a new Gilded Age, except that it's a digital age. And we're headed towards an entirely different system of associating with each other, and a different relationship between the citizens and the governments. Governments exist based on geography and physical property. The new class of internet aristocracy is global and exists on a digital sphere that eludes the state. So it's going to be amazing. We're going to see, something like 2/3 of the world's population is currently excluded from the division of labor because of the way our financial system works. Bitcoin's going to break all that down, unleash all kinds of new human energy, and we're going to be experiencing a prosperity likes of which we've never seen before. And it's all because of freedom, and freedom is breaking out all over because of blockchain and Bitcoin technology. So this isn't just about making a new money, although that's part of it. What's important about Bitcoin is that it's given freedom a new chance that it's never had before in the history of humanity.
Freedom's popular again, as I believe it was Ron Paul who said, "You can't stop an idea whose time has come." And it's interesting to watch, this class of billionaires that became that through I guess heritage, their families, and just stealing and pillaging, and it's shifting over to this group of billionaires that are popping up, anarchists, voluntarists, libertarians that believe in the message of freedom, and that is going to be a force to be reckoned with down the road.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I think we're living through, a real hinge of history. If you can just imagine a door being closed and gradually opened, to a new world, and the creaking of the doors is what we're hearing right now. It's happening inch by inch, but actually very, very quickly at the same time. So I'm very excited. I'm excited to see the feudalism of the past just be wiped out, and in favor of a system of global liberty in which every individual has an opportunity to realize a dignified life. People have human rights, and that the ruling class has their powers taken away from them in favor of a new meritocracy based on a principled attachment to liberty and decentralization. So you have to imagine yourself as a historian 1,000 years from now. You will be writing about 2017 and forward.
Absolutely, and we cannot forget to ensure that individuals are educated enough to make sure that they don't fall for the same games of the central banking cartels throughout the world that are pushing forward centrally planned cashless currencies. We cannot mistake the two, because they're polar opposites. One is incredibly dangerous, and one is a path towards freedom. And we can't go without saying that. They've been pushing this system towards the special drawing rights at the IMF for the centrally planned cashless system that we're seeing develop in China, India, Australia, Sweden, Canada, the US to some extent with the M0, the money supply. We have to watch out, behold a pale horse. We got to stick to our guns here and look at how great decentralization is and stay away from these banker coins.
And like you say, Josh, I mean, people are easily tricked. I mean, like we saw with this net neutrality. I mean, you're on Twitter. You see the thousands of messages. When I wrote my article, I got bombarded by thousands of hate mails. And these are good people. These people thinking that they're defending net neutrality means defending freedom. So it's very easy for people to get confused if they lack information. So we have to make sure that people are not manipulated into supporting the state. And that's essentially what's potentially going to happen here. So that's why it's important. That's why ideas are important. That's why intellectuals are important. That's why reading and adhering to the liberal tradition as our ideal is important, because we don't want to get tricked. We're facing a historic opportunity right now, and if we screw it up, I think in the future people will despise what we've done. But I'm feeling very good about how we're on the right track right now. I mean, not perfect, but that's why as a writer, I try to celebrate anything good that happens, and the repeal of net neutrality is one of them. The triumph of cryptocurrency is a fantastic thing. So I just try to chronicle that in my writing every single day.
Yeah, we have to make sure that people understand that they as individuals are the change they wish to see, and not to just wait for some guy in office to change everything for them, because that always goes in the same direction. But we can always be happy when government gets rid of a bit of government, because of course freedom is intrinsic within us. We can't get it given to us by government, but the only thing government can do is take it away from us or whittle away what they've taken away from us over time. But that's intrinsic to begin with. And just on the topic of net neutrality, I mean, equality is a beautiful thing, but equality shouldn't be forced at the barrel of a gun. Equality should be something that's intrinsic and via the hand of individual liberty, not government.
That's right. And the funny thing about equality that's done at the point of a gun is that it ends up empowering a ruling class and a hierarchy. That's the great irony to me. I mean, all these people talking about freedom, net neutrality, it's like, dude, do you realize you're basically lending your voice to the support of a corporate cartel? And we need to be smart. We need to get smart and educate ourselves.
Yeah, taking away someone else's rights does not give another person a right. That's simply an oxymoron. And you do incredible work, Mr. Tucker. So can you tell our viewers where they can find more of the work you do and support the work you do?
Sure. The Foundation for Economic Education was founded in 1946, and I'm head of content, and I'm building a web presence every single day. So I would suggest you just go to fee.org and sign up for the daily email, and we'll take care of you.
Absolutely, and I just have to suggest people check out the work that fee.org did on the minimum wage in Seattle, which was a mind-blowing piece earlier this year. We did a report on it here at WHAM, and I suggest you just go through the website. There's a wealth of information there, so I hope everyone checks it out. And until next time, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Josh. Take care.
Like what you see here at WHAM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the Anti-Defamation League comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post via Steem, the cryptocurrency. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to come on down to Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico in February, one of the best events of the year, and you can save money on your tickets by typing in promo code WHAM. That's WAM. We'll leave the link below for you, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.